All right, welcome everyone. This is Tim Marlowe with Be the Better Local. We're coming to you live in our studios downtown Tacoma, and we have a special guest for you today. He's a friend of mine. He's coming from the Midwest of the United States there, and he has a wonderful business that he started kind of at a serendipitous moment. But I'll let you tell his story. I'll let him tell his story, and well, welcome, Travis. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm great, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So thank you for taking the time out. Obviously, as podcasters, we love being on the mic, but there's so much on the backside of things that we do to kind of make this whole production and podcast life a business. So
Yeah.
We had the pleasure to kind of catch up with you in the last month or so. But for our listeners that are listening and viewing, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Travis, and I'm probably most known right now for my company PodDecks, which is a tool for content creators. So whether you're a podcaster or a live streamer or just looking to get more engagement from your social media, I've created a tool called PodDecks. They're literally decks of cards with unique interview questions or episode starting prompts. So the idea being that you can pull these cards and spontaneously spark your next great conversation or piece of content. And so it's just been a wild ride this year. 2020 has been all about pod decks for me. But I've been in podcasting for about a decade. So I've been creating podcasts, and then of course helping other people produce their podcasts. So over that time, I learned a lot about the podcasting industry, the trends, what's new, and what really makes a great conversation, which sort of led me down this path to PodDecks.
Yeah. You know, being in the industry for that long, it seems like I came from radio initially. And so I always thought radio was the best thing ever. I don't know why. I always thought billboards were the best thing, and now I don't like any of them. But being in it for 10 years in the podcasting industry, you've had to have seen such a dynamic change. I feel like you're almost like one of the first 8 people that started Google. I mean, you know, even being in it for that long, there's been just so much change in my life in podcasting just over the last 2 or 3 years. So what are some probably the biggest changes that you've seen with podcasting just quickly over the last 10 years?
Yeah. So I think initially podcasting, the cool thing about podcasting is that there's no rules, right? You can really do anything, which, you know, really makes it really interesting because there's some really creative angles. But I think back in the day, most people started out a podcast and they typically did long form interview content or some type of longer content. And I've definitely seen a trend now in 2020, all the way up to 2020 here, that like shorter episodes are totally acceptable. A 5-minute episode is still considered a podcast episode. Like, you know, I compare it to golf, you know, like you hit the drive, which is the longest shot, right? And it counts as one stroke. And then you get on the green and then you putt like maybe 3 feet and it still counts as one stroke. So I like to tell people, like, listen, like every single time you have an idea or a story or a piece of value, it doesn't have to be 60 minutes long in order for you to get that out into your audience. So I think that a lot of people get bottlenecked by that. They think that they have to follow the leader and do these like 2-hour episodes, when in reality, you could just go on and share a short story about what's going on or a message to, you know, you basically have the ability now to transmit a message out to the world whenever you want. So the biggest trend I've seen is that I think episodes now are getting closer to like a shorter, because we have shorter attention spans with things like TikTok and like all these things we're watching.
You know, I was thinking the same thing because of TikTok.
Yeah. So the attention span really, you know, the consumer or the podcast fan or the content fan they really want to get some value, and then they want to get on. You know, it's funny, like in 2020, we're all sort of locked at home, but we're busier than ever. So I've personally, in my own podcast and some of my clients' podcasts, have started to fall into the shorter category, because I'm presuming that somebody isn't commuting an hour to work anymore, but they may walk their dog for 20 minutes or they may watch the news for 10. So I'm trying to do this thing where I'm sort of giving people the quick hit. Now my podcast is called Podcast Therapy. It's very meta because I'm trying to help podcasters overcome the obstacles when you start podcasting. It's more than just setting up a mic and talking, but For my audience, I'm really focused on just focusing on like really one valuable piece of information that they can apply. And I get in, I give them the information, and I get out. So
Mm.
that being said, there's nothing, Joe Rogan's the biggest podcaster in the world, and he goes for like 3 or 4 hours. So, whatever suits your style and what you're trying to do is what you should do. You should not try to make a podcast a specific length. The podcast
Mm.
becomes a length by however long it takes you to transmit that entertainment or
Mm.
educational value.
Yeah. Yeah, conversations. I mean, if you can have a good conversation with somebody, it doesn't matter if you plan for 15 minutes of it, you're going to end up talking 30, 45
Yeah.
minutes. And just because I think that's one of the powers of podcasting is the fact that unlike a written book, once you write it and publish it, it's done, it's over with. You just got to reread it. But podcasting, if the conversation is good, it may be longer. But if
Yeah.
it's just something you're just trying to get a thought across, like you were saying, there's nothing wrong with that shorter clip because honestly, we've seen the trends here as well. That's not just a local thing to your area, that's a global thing. It seems like even 30-second clips and shorter are really getting a big hit in the
Yep.
social media. So we've definitely seen that type of trend happening us here in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Um, what was probably one of the hardest parts of growing your business? Obviously, we're in the early stages as well. When I say early, I say earlier than 10 years probably.
Yep.
And so just tell me a little bit about the struggle and the hard parts about growing a business.
Yeah. So, I mean, PodDecks as a business sort of came just by surprise. It was what I call an accidental business. So, to make a long story short, I was helping people with their podcasts. I couldn't work with everyone, right? When you're an agency, you're selling time, and there becomes this threshold of when you don't have any more time to sell.
Mm,
So I decided to create a course where I could distill all the things that I had learned in my experience and give it to somebody so they could do it on their own, right? And so I built a course, and I love looking into different marketing tactics. But one of the tactics I really love is called the lumpy envelope tactic, where somebody buys something from you and you ship them something that they're not expecting, and it's a lumpy envelope. And when they get their mail, and mail is completely underused now because we're all on email and texting, they have to know what's in that package. They will always open it first. So I decided I was going to take a list of questions that I had. I called them the friends questions, and I would use them at dinner parties and just with my coworkers and all kinds of stuff. And I put them into the form of a deck of cards, and I launched this course, and I sold zero. And then the next week I sold zero. So I started to promote like, hey, by the way, when you buy the course, you're also going to get this bonus of this deck of cards with interview questions to help you um, get further along in your path as an interviewer, right? So I was just thinking of it as this like gift. Well, people started emailing me and saying like, hey, like I don't need your course, but what are the cards you keep showing? And I was like, And so after I got about the fourth or fifth email, I thought, okay, maybe this is actually a tool. So going back to your initial question, um, when I created PodDecks, the biggest struggle for me was that this is a blue ocean idea, right? Like
mm,
questions aren't like, a blue ocean idea, but the concept of having a tool for podcasters, you buy a microphone, you buy your headphones, you get your host, and then you're sort of done with the tools. There's software tools and things like that, but there's no like physical, tangible tools that are going to help you be a better content creator
mm,
besides experience. So the biggest trouble for me was in the beginning was just basically letting people know that A, it existed, and B, sort of explaining like there's lots of different ways to use them. And so that was really, I think, the learning curve. And I'm still in that phase, right? There's still people that will tell me like, hey, I've heard of you. I've sort of heard of pod decks. I don't really know what they are. And, then I get the opportunity to like introduce them to this as a tool that they can, use to have better conversations, make more content, stay consistent, all the wonderful things that are happening with the users of pod decks.
I love that, man. When people ask you that question, I love when people ask me that question. What is BD Local? I've heard of it before. I would love to tell you. And I'm just sitting there grinning because it's not too often that you or I, as the owners of companies, get to really tell our story. It just so happens that people just fall into our story. But when we get to tell it, we get to kind of reflect and think about all the things that we had to go through to kind of beat adversity when we're facing it face to face. I mean, you're a family man, I'm a family man, and so there's bigger things than just running a business that are in
Sure.
our lives. And so when you're running, like I said, in the face of adversity, you got to figure out what you got to do to kind of break through obscurity. So
Yeah.
telling your story and as often as possible seems like one of the best tools that I've had, and it's worked out for you as well, my friend. It seems
Yeah.
like. um, you know, I'm pretty early in my business. My business, owning a business. I'm within 5 years as well, and there's been a lot of things that I would have done probably differently in the start. Um, And I don't know if I would actually go back and do it differently. I just have the mindset of, well, I probably would have done this, because I don't know where it would have been, since I know where I'm at now. Um, but looking back through everything,
Mhm.
what would you have done differently? Like, obviously,
Sure.
this was a fall over a stone type idea that came about, but now it is a full fledged business. What would you have done differently?
Yeah, I think so when you start a business and people tell you that there's something that they want and then you sort of no PodDecks I created very small. So this is something I really recommend if you're like starting anything, whether that's like a business or a YouTube channel or anything. It's very easy to get overwhelmed by like all the things you need. You know, people start a business, the first thing they do before getting any customers is they go get 1,000 business cards printed, right? So don't go print the business cards, and don't go run out and buy bulk of everything. I started PodDecks with getting a few emails that people said they were interested. So what I did was I just started small and I pressed 10 decks and made a
Mm.
website in 2.5 hours and made an ad on my phone and ran it. And that was the spark that started this whole flame. But I could have done it differently and paid $5,000 to have a website built and pressed 20,000 decks to get that bulk pricing, not knowing that I'd be sitting here today telling you that I've sold thousands of units. But
Mhm, mhm.
I think people can get a little bit ahead of the game. So I was in sort of a reaction mode. I was going, okay, now people want this. Now I need to put some stuff in place. And if I could go back and tell myself anything, I would say just just pause for a second while you know you have interest and put some systems into place.
Mm.
Now, I really like my journey because what it allowed me to do was let users give me feedback, let customers give me feedback. You know,
Right.
when I started shipping,
Mhm.
you didn't get like an automated email that gave you tracking. It just said your order has shipped, right? So people were like, "Did my order ship?" Okay, let's put some software into place that generates some information of where your package is, and it
Right.
allowed me to do that stuff and build on top of what I had already built. So I definitely enjoyed that process, but I would have put more systems into place earlier on because if you don't have a system, you really don't have a business. I mean, you have a job, right?
Right.
But if you don't have a system, you couldn't say like I could leave for vacation in
You
2
can't
weeks.
leave.
Correct. So I've been running this business almost single-handedly for a year, and I chose to do that so I could figure out all the dips and the curves and all the things. So in 2021, my goal is to start removing myself from the business in
Mhm.
case I get run over by a bus or, does anyone even know how to log into my website to fulfill orders when I'm gone? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so I think earlier on, I would have probably just paused because I was so excited. I just moved forward
Mhm.
and I let the current and the momentum take me. I would have sat down earlier with a piece of paper and try to figure out some you know the tasks that are repetitive, how to put systems into place to lessen how many times I check my email or
Mhm.
imprinting orders or shipping orders or going to the post office, things like that.
Right. Man, that's huge because, when you're looking back, it's kinda it gives you a chance to almost predict your future because you can either do the same thing or adapt with the change knowing that this would have worked or this wouldn't have worked. Something that I like to just it's almost like a daily mantra, especially when I have the anxiety of not doing enough work,
Hmm.
especially owning a business, having clients reaching out, and you have all of it as well, is that tomorrow is already here. It's called today.
Yep.
And so I have got to do everything I can to do my part in my story, because one day we want to be able to step apart. And if
Right.
we don't set up the right framework so we can have a strategic process, that's not vision, that's not growth, that's just that operational work where someone can take over, where you and I as owners can grow the business to imaginable reaches, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
So with that said, you didn't talk yet about your app. I would love to talk about the app, PodDecks, as well as kind of the future, because I think that more people now than ever are looking for applications to download.
Mhm.
There's too much wishy-washy even on social media these days on exactly what kind of content are they going to allow us to publish and all of this stuff. So having your own app, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the
Yeah.
process of building it, just because we're app developers as well. And tell us a little bit about the future of
Sure.
PodDeck.
So, very quickly, I realized that when you purchase PodDecks, you're excited. You're looking for this tool to help you, and you may be inspired at that exact moment. And
Mhm.
then the order has to be processed, it has to be packed, it has to be shipped, and then you have to wait for it to get to you. So, I started off shipping in the United States only. I started to get a lot of requests from other countries for pod decks, and the shipping overseas is just like ridiculous. It
Mm.
almost costs more than the product itself. So I sat
Wow.
down and said, how can I get this tool into people's hands like instantaneously? And the vessel that we all carry around with us, of course, is the supercomputer called our phone that,
Right.
has more computing power than the Apollo space missions getting to the moon. So I thought to myself, you know, this could put me out, like this could put my decks out of business, but it would have a global reach. It would be instantaneous. It would be frictionless, just like podcasting is.
Mhm.
And so I decided, hey, let's turn this into an app. And I sketched it out on a napkin, I said, this is what I think it should look like. And I started to, do some stuff in Photoshop to create sort of like a vision for it. And then I have a friend who's a web developer who I said, hey, listen, do you think you could build an app? And he said, well, I've never built an app, but I think I could do it. I said, all right, let's give it a shot. Like start building this thing and let's see what it looks like. And so we built the entire thing and it was ready in March.
Mhm.
But then I realized that, we had such not having the app out already, we had an opportunity to make it bigger than just the question. So I
Mm.
sat down and I said, okay, what does a podcaster need? Well, they need a toolbox. They need to know what
Mhm.
kind of gear.
Mhm.
The most common asked question on the internet right now is what microphone do I need? So I put together a toolbox that literally has little drawers. You press a drawer, it opens up, it shows you all my favorite
Right.
tools. I put mini courses in there. So at the time, Quibi was coming out and they were doing these vertical videos. Quibi's now out of business, but I thought, yeah, let's put like a little like mini course section in where I can partner with other experts besides myself. And we could make these little mini courses that you could go in and learn something in 5 to 10 minutes that you could apply to your podcast right away. And I put my own private stash of royalty free music in there, and we do member giveaways and we have member exclusive discounts. And so we added so much in. So it took 5 months. We paused it. We added all these features in and we released it on International Podcast Day, which was amazing.
Mhm.
And it's on Apple and now Android as well. And it was just a way that I thought, as a business owner, I'm always trying to think of how I can put myself out of business, right? So, if you think about this, you go, okay, this is my business right now, right? And in 3 years, what will somebody do to like put me out of business, or how can I put myself out of business? So I thought, apps are huge. Everyone has a phone. It's super accessible. You press a button, it's there. But let's try to put ourselves out of business. And to my surprise, the physical product is still selling because people like a tangible thing. People like to
Mhm.
buy things, like the whole thing. So it, the initial thought of it being scary and putting me out of business could have made me curl up in a little ball and just not do anything. But I
Right.
decided, and I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep trying to put myself out of business because that's how your business ends up evolving.
Mhm.
And if you look at all the big tech companies, like that's all they're doing is trying to put out the next update to put themselves out of business. So that's sort of where the app came from. And it was my first app. And I'm super proud of it because it's beautiful. It's super smooth. It's fast. And we've had over 120,000 card swipes on the app. So
Nice.
that means that means that there's a lot of conversations that have been sparked from it. So
Right.
that really brings me more joy than anything.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I mean, this app is smooth, like you said. I love it. And something that I just want to reiterate, as the listeners and viewers are watching, one of the things that you said that you would have done differently in the beginning was have more of a thought and process.
Mhm.
I think you learned from that and you implemented that exact same thing with the app because you
Yeah.
could have pushed it out as soon as the cards were ready, as soon as the subscriptions were ready.
Yeah.
But you actually took that same piece of advice for your own self and your own story to pause, look at the bigger picture, and see what else you can deliver as a service. And I think you've done an absolutely amazing job. It's
Thanks.
impressive.
I haven't even put that two and two together until you just brought that up. So thank you. That makes me
Yeah.
feel actually better about it.
You should, because I mean, as owners, you have got to learn to adapt. And again, not saying that you would be here exactly in the same moment in time with the same stats if you would have paused on the decks, but I think there was a reason why you didn't, because you needed to push something out to get the feedback for the vision to mold into what it needed to be.
Yep.
But the app, you could hold on to that for a moment just because it is so diverse. It is more than just a single dimension type thing, which
Yeah.
would be what this is. This is very dimensional. The app is so diverse and it can reach all corners of the world without you having to leave your home studio there. So
Yeah.
it's amazing what you've been able to do. And I think as a business owner, I congratulate you for
Oh, thank you.
just learning to adapt and learning when to pull the trigger and when not to pull the trigger. And honestly, um, collaborating with people in the community that are kind of doing the same vision as you. I think that's really, without someone dropping millions of dollars into your account as an investor, I think that is one of the most untapped resources that people are forgetting, is the fact that we are vulnerable. We are good at specific things, but if we can learn to be friends with everybody else that are good at their avatar, then
Hmm.
we can build unimaginable things here. Before we head out today, and again, thank you, Travis, for being a part of our show today. It's called Be the Better Local. We highlight influencers, podcasters, business owners, musicians, and artists all across the world to allow you to shine in what you do best. And what you do best right now is connecting podcasters with great tools called PodDecks. How can we support you? How can the listeners and viewers, again, follow you on social media and download the app?
Sure. So I am heavily invested in Instagram. So I spend a lot of time on Instagram. So at PodDecks, I go live all the time and interview random people just to show you that you can be completely unprepared for an interview, yet have this incredibly interesting conversation. I'm always posting
Yeah.
tips on podcasting, sharing my podcast, sharing other, other people in the podcasting space. So that's where I spend most of my time. I also have a Facebook group called the Podcast Builder Club.
Mhm.
And the reason I started that was because I wanted to create a safe space for people to come collaborate, ask questions, because all the other groups I'm part of, you'll ask, someone will ask a question. They're brand new to podcasting. They ask a question that is to the rest of the group, potentially maybe an easy question or something that's
Mhm.
already been asked. And they just get completely pummeled by all
Right.
these people yelling at them. So we don't
Go
stand for
to
that
the
in our
post
group.
a week ago. We just posted
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So it's a safe space. I call it guff with my kids. Don't guff me. We don't have any guff and it's a safe space for people. So that's why I created it. And, but Instagram is my jam. If you come follow me, you'll get a lot of fun, valuable tips. You'll get to see the cards. I actually post pictures of the cards and watch the comments roll in, because giving your audience a platform to engage with you is the way to get in comments and likes and all those things. So, and then of course, poddecks.com is where you can find all of my decks and apparel. And then of course, the PodDecks app is available everywhere. So you can download it and you can try it out completely free. Every deck has free cards. There's actually an episode deck in there that has over 60 episode starting prompts. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, but you're tired of staring at a blank piece of paper, you don't really know where to start, just open that up. It'll give you a prompt and it'll give you over a year's worth of ideas to podcast with without ever having to
Mm.
plan anything. So it's
Wow.
a lot of fun. And, I'm building this community, which has really turned out to be the biggest part of PodDecks is the network, the fabric, the mesh of all these users and people like yourself who
Mm.
are collaborators. So it's awesome.
And usually I don't pick up my phone during interviews, but as an app developer, you understand, I'm actually playing with this his app here, and it's fun. There's so many things that I can sit here and play with and view, and there's just multiple buttons to. It's just knowledgeable, and I could sit here probably for about an hour and not do anything other than just scroll through to see all the amount of content that you have going on here. So, an app developer, I just thank you for producing such a great quality app
Thank
with
you.
the content that we need today. Um, uh, Usually on our show, I have a co-host. He is currently working, so I appreciate being able to just get you on screen today, my friend. But usually we now have a PodDecks segment, so we'll actually interview each other. We'll pick a question out and we'll just kind of answer each other for a couple minutes there. And we started to ask all of our guests that are coming on board as well, so they're not prepped with the questions, so I'm not going to prep you as well, but
Yeah.
have a little bit of an advantage here. So
I do. Yeah, I do know some of the questions already, but there's something to be said about spontaneity. So I love the fact that there isn't any prep, and that's what's going to make
okay,
this next part interesting.
right. I'm not going to do that one because I just did that one on my show the other day, and that was a really fun one. All right, so we are in the Pod Decks. What the heck deck?
That's my
Um,
favorite deck.
what set of items could you buy that would make the cashier the most uncomfortable?
Yeah, this is a good one. So, this has actually happened to me a few times in my life where I've been on like a run to get a couple things, and you put them on the little conveyor belt and they're starting to go, and the lady's like boop, she looks at what it is and she puts it and boop, and then all of a sudden she's piecing what these things are together. That must be the most fun part about being a cashier, is seeing what people buy. So I think probably a couple items that would make someone feel uncomfortable would potentially be like duct tape, a shovel, maybe some rope, or like bleach. When you put those all together, it's sort of like, okay, what are we working on here
Enema
today?
pack.
Yeah. So or just like a complete, just a whole conveyor belt full of like baby food. But there's no baby with you, right? And like, does this guy just eat baby food,
Right.
um, but those are fun. How about you? What do you think? What do you think? What's a combination that you think might make somebody feel uncomfortable?
I just think anything medical when it's not
Yeah.
necessarily for me, when it's just personal things. And, I've gotten comfortable with it, being married and having women in my family,
Yes.
and getting things for them to, um, really, it's really unique to bring it all together when you're thinking about other people's perspective and they're looking down it, because like you said, you expect them to scan a bag of marshmallows and then Hershey's chocolate and then graham cracker. Okay, this guy's going to go
Yeah.
do some s'mores.
Yeah.
But like you said, duct tape,
Yeah.
shovel, enema to,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just all that stuff seems like it'd be pretty funny to me.
Secondarily, I think probably like if you're going in and you're getting like cough drops and cough syrup and all, like you're clearly sick, right? So I think that would make a cashier, if you're exposed to people all day long and here's this sick person buying all this stuff because they're sick and they're blowing their nose in line, that would definitely make me feel uncomfortable.
Right, here we go. We're just trying to push things along with a pencil so we're not touching their items.
Exactly.
Don't worry, it's just COVID
Yeah.
precautions. Well, Travis, man, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. We're going to head out here in just a moment. Before we do, I love being able to just hear maybe an inspirational quote from you guys. What is there to come? What can you leave our audience with? Because we love being able to take action. That is the only way that we can become better as individuals, is if we take the action needed to be the change. So, give us some action. What can we
Sure.
learn from you?
Yeah. So before I answer that, because I have a good answer for that, I want to thank you for what you do for the community, sharing these podcasts, sharing people's stories, because I do think it's very helpful to those out there that are watching or maybe, just on the edge about to start something or improve something. So my gratitude to you. What I can leave you with is this. This applies to everything in life, whether you're going to start a podcast, a business, a family. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And I think there's a lot of factors in all of those that could bottleneck you from actually going, okay, today's the day. If you want to lose 5 pounds, right, you got to put the candy away today, or you have to, if you're going to podcast, you got to, you just have to press record. So the next time you're about to start something and you get that aching feeling of like, I'm an imposter, or I don't know if I can do this, just press start, press record, go buy the domain, do something, because every little step you take, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago or today, right? So think of yourself as this lush tree that's going to grow over the next couple decades. You want to plant that seed today. So, and if 2020 has taught us anything, nothing is really guaranteed, right? Your job may not be guaranteed, your health may not be guaranteed. So the last thing you want to do is go out on that note of like, oh, I should have started that podcast, or I should have started that YouTube channel. And start ugly, start dirty, just like I think we're convinced based on what we see other people doing that everything has to be perfect, and perfect is the most boring thing in the world. My entire business was a happy accident, right? And I'm super grateful for that. And you can have happy accidents too. And some of the most wonderful things that have ever happened in music, in film, were complete accidents. Like I'll give you an example. The Beatles, right? They started recording, and one of the sound engineers put the tape on backwards, and it started to play the music backwards. And John Lennon said, "That's brilliant. I want to hear everything I play backwards before it goes on a record." So that's where they got that whole backwards vibe from one guy making one simple mistake in the studio. So you never know what's going to happen by just actually starting right now.
Man, I love that, man. There's so much depth to just that in itself. I believe we can even probably have our own show and continue to have that conversation, because if you don't do anything different, you're going to live a life that you already know.
Yep.
But if you do something different today, you can live a life you've never lived. And if you want change, and if you want to be able to break out of whatever shell that you're in, do something different.
Yeah.
It starts with action. It starts with that step that Travis is talking about. So, and we firmly believe that here at BD Local, especially our show with Be the Better Local, because again, this show is meant to highlight those that are taking action to be the change needed in the world today. So we thank you. We thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. All right, cool.
Awesome.